Okay, so free agency is still far from over. There will be plenty of moves. There are big name quarterbacks who are currently on the market still, but we have had a good amount of free agent moves, and I want to talk about 7 winners and 7 losers. So this is the 7 losers list, and I want to start off by just clarifying, I'm not necessarily going to hold it against the team if they didn't have enough money to re-sign all their players, so they had to let some players walk. Although, if you let too many players walk or, still took a hit, I will factor that in. But really what I'm doing is, from the moment free agency started, from the day before the legal tampering period to now, what are 7 teams that I feel worse about than I did entering that time frame? So yeah, without further ado, let's get into it. Number 7, I feel like I kind of have to put the Texans on here. That's just like legally required because they traded away Laramie Tunsil. Listen, they got all right value back for Tunsil, I think. A second and a third. That's not bad. Obviously, the criticism that I have is, why are you trading away offensive linemen, especially a very good pass blocking offensive lineman, when you already had so much struggles with that last year? They also traded away Kenyon Green, but whatever, that's fine. The real concern is Laramie Tunsil. I do have to say though, and the reason why they're only 7 is I like a lot of the other moves they did. I like adding Christian Kirk. I think that's a smart kind of small move there. I like the CJ Gardner-Johnson trade. I think that's going to help them. So yes, this was and I like locking up Derek Stingley now. He's a great player. Why wait? Yeah, I think that's smart as well. So I like most of what they did. I do think there are some valid criticisms of really that one move, and so you kind of have to put them at 7. But ultimately, they're just at 7. This was not a horrible offseason period for them. Just one move I didn't like. Number 6 is the Dolphins, who are basically in the exact same situation where there's one move I didn't love, and maybe this will change, but the Zach Wilson deal, paying him decent backup quarterback money. Listen, I am someone who was famously very high on Zach Wilson. I had him as my quarterback 1 in that draft class over Trevor Lawrence. Nailed it. No issues there whatsoever. Okay, hasn't quite worked out for Zach Wilson. And I think my frustration with the Dolphins is I just want to see them go out. Why not add Marcus Mariota? And maybe he wouldn't have signed, but you can add someone. I promise you, backups will not be against going to Miami in a situation where there's a quarterback who has injury history and it's a great situation. The Dolphins have missed the playoffs because they've struggled at the backup quarterback position. It's very possible Zach Wilson could struggle there as well. It's a pretty similar scheme to where he struggled with the Jets. Maybe it's a Jets situation where when guys leave the Jets, they get better, but it just feels like Zach Wilson should be going to a team that has no quarterback situation figured out. The Dolphins are the opposite. They have a quarterback who just can't stay healthy. They need a veteran. Again, I like their other moves fine. This is simply a one move criticism thing. Moves like James Daniels and Nick Westbrook-Ikhine and Afiti Melifonwu, those are fine moves. It's just I have one criticism, so that's what I'm going to be talking about. Again, most teams make smart decisions. It's hard to there's only so much you can criticize, but I do think that this they mostly made smart decisions, but enough of a bad move in my opinion to just throw them on the list. Next up we have the 49ers at number 5. And listen, I said I'm not going to criticize a team too much who just doesn't have the money to re-sign some players, but okay, there is a point, right? When you're losing this much talent. I mean, you lost Deebo Samuel, Aaron Banks, Javon Hargrave, Malik Collins, Leonard Floyd, Dre Greenlaw, who was injured last year, but still, Charvarius Ward, Hufanga is gone. I mean, this is a chunk of players. You're not even in the rookie deal yet portion of Purdy's contract. That's a chunk, right? And I think that you kind of have to put them as losses. They did what they can. I actually kind of like the Mac Jones backup signing. I think he is someone who Miami could have looked towards. I think he's an all right player. He's just not he needs to be in a great situation to succeed, and that's kind of funny. But just the fact that there was the whole should he have been drafted 3rd overall now ends up here anyway. But yeah, even losing Jordan Mason, for example, it's I don't know what the what the point of that was. So ultimately, I get the point of it. You need to, you need money. I get it, but I think it's fair to put them on the list. Number 4, I have the Kansas City Chiefs, who did make some moves that I like. I like, keeping Trey Smith. I think he's good. I think some Chiefs fans are divided on him, but when Creed Humphrey and Joe Thuney have been your other interior guys, Trey Smith maybe doesn't look quite as good, but trust me, he's a great player. A lot of teams would like to have him. I like adding Nick Bolton, and I also really liked the move like Kristen Fulton, adding some depth in the secondary, and Gardner Minshew as a backup. I think makes a lot of sense. The biggest criticism and why they're on the list was the Joe Thuney trade, which I just didn't love. I think that Joe Thuney is a really good player, and you're trying to be competitive now. I get that when you're in a dynasty, you have to also build for the future, but I don't know. I think I would have, again, I also wouldn't have traded away Tyreek Hill, and that move worked out, but I wouldn't have done that, I think. And replacing him with a second-round pick in Kingsley Sumatea last year, who didn't really work at tackle. Maybe he'll work at guard. Maybe he won't. Also, you have Jalen Moore, who they signed to a pretty big deal, $15 million a year, for a guy who we've seen play tackle good when he's been out there, but doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to be a great starter. We've also seen that happen. We'll see, but I think it's fair to say I have some real concerns about the Kansas City Chiefs that I didn't have these past couple of years, but they're also the Chiefs. They're still Super Bowl contenders, but will they win the Super Bowl is always the question, and I don't know if they will with some of these moves, but I don't know that they won't either. Next up, we have the Carolina Panthers, who, again, these moves aren't all horrible, but the real reason they're on this list is the Trayshawn Wharton pick signing and the Trayvon Moorhig signing. Two guys that are effective enough players, two guys that I can see why you would want on your team, but you're paying over $30 million now for these two guys for each of the next 2 years, and then the third year, not all of it's guaranteed, but essentially for most of the next 2 years, you're going to be paying $30 million for two effective players, but this is not necessarily getting two star players. Just a bit, spending a bit much here. I get that they wanted to improve the defense, but I also would have liked to see them improve the receiving core a little bit. Maybe you do that in the draft, but I want to see Bryce Young get a little bit more help in the passing game. They haven't really addressed that either. Again, they need a lot of issues. Adding good players helps you win football games, and these are effective players, but they felt both like overpays to me. Number 2 is the Philadelphia Eagles, who, again, similar to the 49ers, have kind of been bled dry by you only have so much money, you have free agents, it is what it is. They did a very similar thing happen 2 years ago when they lost the Super Bowl, so we know they can bounce back from it. But still, I would say a couple of these moves still felt like moves that they didn't necessarily have to make. I will say first, good job to sign Zach Bond. I think he's a very good player. Keeping him in the building makes a lot of sense. The guy's was one of the best linebackers in the league last year, if not the best. A couple of the moves, like for one thing, why are we trading for Dorian Thompson-Robinson? I get he's quarterback 3, but he was brutal last year. I'd rather have Kenny Pickett. I guess it's a price thing, maybe. I don't know. Probably just a price thing. But the real move I didn't like was why are we trading for Kenyon Green, a guard who has not done really anything since he's entered the league. He's really struggled in the Texans offensive line, which was bad last year, was better when he wasn't out there. And why are we giving up a starting safety, CJ Gardner-Johnson, for it? Listen, Eagles know way more about offensive lines than I do, so I could be way off about this, but I'd rather not be giving up a starting safety when you're already losing so many other positions here, losing Darius Slay. Listen, some of these moves you just had to make, but I felt like they didn't have to make all of these moves and still ultimately did, and that's why I'm concerned, and that's why they're on the losers list. But number 1 on this list, and this might be a bit of a hot take, but allow me to elaborate, is the Cleveland Browns. And listen, it has nothing to do with any of these other moves. Joe Tryon-Shoyinka is a fine $4.5 million option. I'm just saying that I did not like the Myles Garrett move. I just think that wasn't smart. Because yes, you are going to be getting a Hall of Fame player play for you for his entire career. That's cool. You'll take that. But ultimately, how many years of Myles Garrett do you still have left? The next 2 years, Deshaun Watson is going to be still under contract. It's a fully guaranteed deal. It is what it is. It was a mistake. You're here now. You're stuck with them. You have to live with the mistake. But for this Myles Garrett contract, you had maybe an opportunity to get out of this situation. You could make a Matthew Stafford with the Lions trade of let's get multiple, I don't know if it would have been multiple first round picks or maybe a first and a third or something like that, but you would have gotten really strong draft value for a player that you could then build for the future. And also, he's not going to help you win games, which might be what you need right now, is to not be winning games. That's why I think it's a mistake. Ultimately, I just believe that if you're a rebuilding team, which Cleveland clearly is, you should be trading away players, not signing them to these massive contracts to where you're essentially just hurting to rebuild, I think, by doing something like this. But yeah, that's just kind of how I see all of this. What do you think? What do you agree with? What do you disagree with? Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.